Welcome to the 9642 podcast. This is your host, Mr. Number 9.
And this is The Fool.
Hello, everyone. We are doing an end of season wrap for our podcast. We're going to talk about Premiership. If we have time, we might talk about other things, but we'll go through our personal highlights and lowlights for the year.
Yeah.
For the season, rather, because we've had our year one in December.
Yes.
But why did you start off? What was your sporting Premiership-related highlight or football-related highlight this season?
I think most of my highlight came early in the season. I mean, Chelsea was playing well. Everything was looking good. Lukaku was being awesome and looking like he was worth the money we'd spent to bring him over. So yeah, it was sort of that first third, nearly half season. There was lots to like about that. Everything was going reasonably well. Everything was looking good. Then things happened, but things happen all the time. The wonderful world of football, English football over Christmas. Some injuries, sicknesses, COVID, Lukaku going sticking his foot in his mouth, all sorts of fun.
I will clarify that interview was like 6 weeks before before he moved to Chelsea, you know.
Oh no, it was recorded in November. It was recorded after he moved to Chelsea, but it was recorded in like early November.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that was taken out of context in that, and it was a little different to what it was, but it came out at a bad time, basically. In the end, when it actually got released was he'd gotten injured, just come back, then got COVID, was out, the team had started to lose, we'd lost Chilwell, I think Reece James was injured.
Yeah.
There was a couple of other injuries in there as well. Everything is sort of was falling apart, and then the interview came. And then he returned, and he wasn't as well. And there's good arguments to say it wasn't his fault that he wasn't as good. Well, that things weren't as good. Did listen to a good podcast where it squarely pointed out that two things: that Lukaku was playing he's playing a different role than what he was playing in Inter. In Inter, he was one of two strikers, so he was coming back, getting the ball a lot, turning, running with the ball, and running into space with the ball a lot, and running at defenses, and having an ability to sort of also a strike partner either to lay off to or get it from. But at Chelsea, he's playing the lone striker, so there's a lot of hanging up front, getting the ball, holding it, and then playing it forward to the two wingers, so whoever's playing with him. And it's just slightly different, and it meant that you can't look at his overall stats and go, oh, look at Inter here was all this better. It's like, actually, he was playing a completely different game in a completely different system. And the other thing that just looking at numbers showed was that the big difference was basically losing Chilwell. Chilwell was a big part of it, and Reece James was out for a reasonable amount injured. So when the two of them were injured was the period where Lukaku was, quote-unquote, at his worst.
He kind of needed a bit of time to recover from injury and COVID. Like, almost every athlete has a different recovery from COVID thing. Like, and it kind of depends how it goes for them, and it's not necessarily related to how severe the injury is.
No.
Like the illnesses, like famously in the NFL, Lamar Jackson got COVID and he had to miss like a game in the 2021 season. And he's vaccinated and everything, so he did. He said that basically, unlike a lot of people in the NFL were like, oh yeah, we're young, and once we got the illness, we just kind of, it was chill, like it was vibes. We stayed home. We still managed to train and whatnot.
Yeah.
Whereas Lamar was literally like, yeah, I just went home and slept. That's all I could do. I couldn't do anything but sleep. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise for him because, you know, he wasn't putting any wear and tear on his body, and you know, what he was what he didn't have in reps, he made up for with body recovery, and because he's young, like just the raw athleticism helps.
Yeah. No, that's true as well.
So,
But yeah,
But a lot of people like who didn't have that tough a COVID session like come back really slowly because their bodies actually has had stuff they just haven't felt it.
yeah, and that was probably like say Lukaku got it just he'd just come back from being injured. I think he was back had played like 2 weeks, maybe three,
Yeah,
and then he got COVID. So that's also going to have impact. Like he was injured, so his body was still recovering.
yeah,
Then he gets COVID. Like it's yeah,
yeah,
that's not going to help either. And so then he comes back after that, and the people he had been getting the most service from and therefore looking the most dangerous were out injured as well, or whatever. So that sort of things, and the likes of Mount had sort of fallen off as well on their ability, also due to all the things going on there. So you can sort of see how that, you can't expect him to be a one man band and do everything himself and be like
yeah.
some magical thing just because Lukaku's playing. Suddenly he's scoring a million goals. It's like he needs. There's lots of things that go into that. Um,
Yeah.
and though the big one that was pointed out that I saw was that obviously in the Chelsea system he's not expected to run with the ball, like get the ball, turn and run. That's not what he's doing. That's not his role and things. But at Milan, the previous season, that's what he did like a lot, and was
Yeah.
super dangerous. And that was where he was at his most dangerous, was when he had ball at feet, running at defenses, and with space, and could run in the ball into space and either lay it off, run it, pass, or have a shot himself. Um, that's
Um,
where he's creating the most chances.
I am gonna say it because this is a blast from the past, which I think you might enjoy. I feel like Lukaku has the Emil Heskey problem
Yeah,
because he's big and strong and athletic, and he's from Africa, or at least of African descent, even though his footballing education is all from Belgium.
yeah,
The thing in England is they expect him to be a target man, and he's
yeah.
nothing shown that he's ever been that player.
No,
Just because he grew up loving Didier Drogba doesn't mean they're the same player.
yeah,
And
exactly.
like even when he was at West Brom, he wasn't. He's like the support striker. He's the number two guy behind. Like, sure, I don't think he's as technical as Emil Heskey, who I think was a really good passer, really good at finding, attracting defenders and drawing them away, like that positional sense that he
Yeah,
had. And I think Emil Heskey had a better first touch, but
yeah.
it's
I mean, that
one
does
of
let
those.
Lukaku down a bit his first touch. I think
Yeah,
Lukaku does do the target man role well as well when he gets good service. It's just that he can't. He's not the perfect target man. The one
he's
that's
not
sort of
he's not a number nine specialist. He
no.
can play it if at a pinch,
Yeah.
but against good teams with good defenses, if he's your number nine, you're not gonna get that. You're not gonna get the
Well,
forward possession that you're looking for,
at least not off the
or the goals.
scraps.
You're not
Yeah.
gonna get the goals that you
Yeah. Well,
need
you need to
because
have a bit more quality in the feeds coming into him, the crosses coming or the balls coming in. Like it needs. It's that difference between you know, the true number nine who anything coming in can get it, hold it, and do the role. Whilst Lukaku can do it reasonably well, not excellent, not world class, but especially if he's got if he had good crosses coming in or good passes that he could do, then it's fine. But it was when it's that quality from the feed dropped off, which came from injuries and a bit of disruption and all sorts of other things going on. It just showed that yeah, exactly, that's not his style. And whilst he could do it, it wasn't going to be an ongoing thing. Which makes me a little sad because it would be when you look at the numbers and look at the way where changes happen, you're like, oh, if we used him the way that actually suits his play style, or at least kept him
so,
and played in that way when we needed that's what we used. And a little bit more of the City way, which is very much horses for courses. Which is the players that are going to give us the win this time? Those are the ones playing with that
yeah.
I think, but
Like, it's
yeah,
interesting to me that Manchester City have nobody in their team who's played more than 29 games,
yeah,
league games.
yeah. I know.
Like, this
I thought there
shows you
was.
how well they rotate their
I
squad.
thought one of the
And
defenders had made 32 or 31,
may
but
have
yeah,
been Consalo,
yeah,
just because he's does everything.
yes,
Like, barring Edison, of course.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Field players, but yeah, I know that was the other thing I had pointed out in the same podcast was like Jack Grealish, the City, like was it £100 million player? Was it 23 games or 24 games? But they point out his stats are actually really awesome. Like if you look at any of his, like people would say, oh, not worth it. He hasn't played, doesn't actually look at the stats and the things he's bringing to the team. Like, no, he's actually performing really well, and as perhaps their second best player next to Kevin De Bruyne. Like that means he's worth the money, and that's what City play. That's why I say they make sure that the people out on the field are the people they need out on the field on that day. Like, who are we
Yeah.
playing?
Like,
How are we going to win this game?
we can make fun of the fact that Guardiola is consistently tinkering with his teams,
Yeah,
and like so a lot of times to his detriment, but it's also the strength of Guardiola is the
yeah,
fact that he's always tinkering with his teams and trying to like he doesn't see a static board, he like sees the dynamic game state,
yeah,
which like and which means that you're gonna make mistakes because you never so many things are about probabilities in the moment when you're playing with the dynamic board state. Like,
yeah.
it's
Exactly.
interesting to me that Guardiola says that he learned to do this by watching rugby,
That is interesting.
and like this is why he like consistently watches rugby games to learn about how to evolve in a game state, because like the whole breakdowns of the ruck and mauls, like that's what really interests him, and how the defense, like good teams, the backs set up, like they're consistently watching what the forwards are doing. They move around and set themselves up depending on what the position, what's happening in the breakdown.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
like the whole picking your squad for game states, like because rugby until recently was allowing a lot of substitutions,
yeah,
you could implement players in the like. I think one of the strengths of Steve Hansen is that he knew the right player to bring in.
yeah. And that was very much the strength, even in the later Graham Henry days, and definitely Steve Hansen was, for the All Blacks, was that they were a 23-man team, and
Yeah.
everybody had their role, and everybody knew what it was, and there was no, everybody could execute their part of the plan, whichever part of the squad they were, whether they were starting 15 or coming on later. Like, they knew what that meant, and they knew how they could do that.
And like the All Blacks strategy, which is keep the ball alive, keep the ball alive, doesn't matter what happens, as long as the ball's alive, we can win.
Yeah.
Like that's very similar to City's strategy
Mm.
of like keep the ball, keep the ball, keep the ball.
Yep. I think a good example of just Guardiola and City this year and that tinkering and keeping it alive and things was, in fact, the last game where he subbed at halftime, subbed out Fernandinho and brought in Zinchenko. Um, and he said after the game, he did it like Fernandinho's last game. You take him off at halftime, like he's not that bad a game. And it's like, well, no, it was just we needed width on the left. We needed someone to stretch the game. So he brought in a naturally left-footed player to play out on the left to create the width, and it basically worked amazingly, and arguably won City the championship with that one move.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's to me that just shows that style, which is what is the thing that we need. We need someone on the left who plays a left-footed player on the left. Okay, who are we taking off? Or which one's going to? Yeah, how is this actually making this work? Oh, Fernandinho, you're off. Zinchenko, you're on. And it's like didn't matter that it was Fernandinho's last game and all the rest and all the stuff around that. It's like nope, we need the win. This is how we're winning. And you can see that Fernandinho was like, yep, no, that's a good move. Like, this is how we win. Okay, I'm on board with that. Even though it's his last game and everything as well. Like, he's just, yep, that's cool, good move. So yeah, I thought it just showed all of everything about City and Guardiola and how it all works together, and the stat of
Yeah,
how little game. Well, most of the players are playing 23 to 25 or 26 games for the whole season, and
yeah.
yeah,
Like having that, they have a philosophy to fall back on. So when in doubt, City players know what they have to do
yeah,
if they're not, if the game state's not not obvious. And like I think Guardiola very much buys into the four phases
yeah.
theory
Oh,
of football. Like that's why his teams very rarely get caught out in transition,
mm.
except in Champions League knockout games. But like, but it's one of those things. Like it was obviously bad to have Fernandinho on for as long as they did in that game.
yeah,
Like Ancelotti almost played it perfectly. Like I think Ancelotti basically out tacticked both Klopp and Guardiola
yeah,
back to back games. And he said after the game that, that Liverpool's kind of predictable.
yeah,
Like he got lucky with City. Don't get me wrong. Like that was a and like Guardiola just made a mistake. It wasn't like he wouldn't usually do something like as you very clearly mentioned, he's willing to change the tactics of his team just based on the game state because he views the dynamic game state. Yeah.
yeah,
Whereas like I don't think Klopp does that. Like Klopp is a bit more married to the philosophy and like obviously he also has a smaller squad.
yeah,
Realistically, if we think that Liverpool are the only team that can challenge City, they have to hope everything goes right for them and City's foul up somewhere, or they have a bad season, like lots of injuries, like the
yeah, yeah.
season after COVID. You know, the
Like,
the season just before COVID.
yeah, I like to think Chelsea can can run with those two. Um, but yeah, I
I
think
They might on paper, but like just practically, like what's always happened.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like Tuchel doesn't seem to have that same like he's gonna evolve. Like it's it's very hard to judge Tuchel. He's never had a full season that's like you have a full season of stuff like
yeah,
just sort it out.
yeah. That's fair.
And like and he he's always had something and he's always had to deal with the crisis in many ways similar to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Mm-hmm.
And like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is classic Mark Anthony type, really good in a crisis,
Yeah,
because he's all about the man management, and I think that's why Ancelotti, like that's one of his strengths, right? He's a really good man manager, and he kind of lets he doesn't ignore tactics, but he's happy to keep it simple and
yeah,
play it to like he doesn't need a philosophy. He's happy to adapt his tactics based on the team he has,
yeah, yeah.
which is arguably like the best quality for a manager to have.
Well, it's yeah, it's good when when they can do instigate that, like actually be like, oh, what have we
You've
got?
got
How
the
does this,
squad,
and then get
which
the best out of it as well.
like
Like,
if you've got a good team, like if you've got a good squad, which Ancelotti does,
mm,
I think it's would be very remiss to say that he doesn't get the best out of a group of good players because he lets them do they're in a different way to the way Pep does. Yeah, Pep very much gets the best out of them by making them play the Pep way.
yeah, yeah,
And he trains them to play the Pep way. They're good players, but he adapts them to fit his way and then make them more effective in his system. Whereas Ancelotti just goes, okay, I have a player that can do this, this, and this. Let's build a system and go. You guys know what to do. This is where I'm putting you. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's like, what is the best? Well, with these players, what is the best system to play, as opposed to what players do I need to best play this system?
yeah. Like it's hard for, like other than Lionel Messi, like especially in City with the kind of resources they have now. Like I don't think you'll have a Benzema type talisman player in City.
Yeah,
there are too many, like it's too evenly spread around.
Yeah, yeah,
But like the counter to that is a talisman like Benzema who just comes up and like puts the team on his back.
yeah, exactly.
And like I've had this argument with, or rather this conversation with my cousins in Canberra. Like I think you and I agree that Benzema deserves Ballon d'Or, like
Oh,
without,
100%.
especially since it's going to be given out before the World Cup. But
Yeah.
it's just that when your talisman is a striker, it hits different.
Mm-mm.
Like, or like a goal scorer type, it hits different. Like the guy who generates attacking threats and like, because everybody holds out. Like all your worst players, if they're in the defense or something, they will hold out. They'll try and keep the ball out just because they know as long as they don't get too far back, this guy can bring us back into the game
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like Manchester United had that with Eric Cantona, and then like Cristiano Ronaldo when he had that season,
Yeah.
his Ballon d'Or season at United, and then similarly we had like Jamie Vardy at Leicester.
Yeah.
Like I'm not taking anything away from players like Mahrez and all of them. They were all they everybody and Kante of
Yeah.
course, but if they didn't have Vardy and if like he wasn't such a talismanic striker, not just a good striker.
Yeah, yeah. I was saying, he was definitely, yeah, the central piece that they were all building themselves around. Like, the others may have got a lot more of the, they were better players and got the rewards from it. Kante came to us, Mahrez went to City, all the sort of stuff. But yeah, that season for Leicester was because of Vardy. He's the one that pulled them through that. The rest of them were playing well off him and giving him the ball so he could do something with it. But
Yeah.
they were, it felt like they were following him more than.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if not following him, but there
Maybe
were
it's the wrong
times
word,
when the
but yeah.
team, there were times when the team were like desperate, but they felt like they were in a desperate situation, but they stayed calm and just won games because they knew Vardy would get them a goal if
Yeah.
they gave him half a chance because he's just that sort of player.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's different if your talisman's a midfielder or a defender. Like, there are times when United's talisman has been Roy Keane. Like he just
Yeah.
sit there and put the team on his back and get the passes. But, unless he's going out of his way to go out and try and score goals, because Roy Keane could score them as well. It's not the same as having someone like Eric Cantona or James Vardy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a different type of talismanic thing because he's like the captain leader type as well.
Yeah.
And like Chelsea had it with John Terry.
I was gonna say it's I think the late 2000s. It's interesting to try / early 2010s. It's interesting to try work out who it is when we had John Terry, who was clearly very talismanic and the talismanic defender and the captain and the hard man. And that he also had Frank Lampard, and
Yeah.
he also fitted the same thing and was the midfielder creator, but also running through box to box, getting back, getting up, scoring goals.
Yeah,
Dragging.
like Stevie G at Liverpool, right? Like
And we had Drogba as well doing the similar things. When you talk about a talismanic
Drogba was your
striker.
big game player,
Yeah.
right? But he wasn't the talisman because there were games where he just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, but still, if it was a game where you needed the goal for, the win was needed for something, he was going to get the goal in that.
Yeah.
It's maybe if it was a game that like this doesn't feel like it means much. You've got others that can score and they've scored. Sure, he wasn't gonna score in every game, and he wasn't scoring. Yeah, but if there was a big important goal that needed scoring, or there was a game that was just like it needed the win and everything, it's like you knew Drogba was going to score a goal at the end. If I mean that was it 2012 Champions League campaign to a
I've
T.
rarely seen Drogba play well when the rest of the team is playing poorly. Like that's what a talisman does when the rest of the team's losing morale, playing poorly. Like they put him on. Like John Terry's put Chelsea on his back when
No.
Chelsea's just absolutely like they feel like they're having a laugh, and John Terry just comes up going like, "You're not passing me. I don't care how crap my teammates are playing today.
Yeah.
Like
No,
I'm still JT."
Yeah, no. Like like all three of them, I think at different times filled the talismanic role in their own ways, and sometimes sort of in the same season, in different ways, and yeah, in each of their own iconic ways. And yes, definitely John Terry was that. Like, it's doesn't matter what else is happening in this game, you're not scoring goals. Like, I don't care
Yeah.
exactly how bad things are going. We're not conceding. It's just that's just the way of it. And this defense is getting organized. And if I have to go grab some heads and whack them together to get them in the right place, that's what's happening. And people will go, "Oh yeah, oh John, thanks for that. Sorry, yeah, we totally were like zoned out. Let us get into the right place." And it's like, yeah, get in the right place. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I would, if for that reason, I would pick John Terry as the talismanic player for most
Mhm.
of the 2000s.
Yeah.
But I just find it interesting that when you think about it and look at it like that, Lampard also did things like that, and he did the same thing where he made sure like if we needed the goal, he was there. He scored some big goals. He scored some important goals. He scored goals where everything just looked flat.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
you're right that
And
yeah.
in many ways, I think for you guys, after those guys retired or left the club,
Mm.
it was Eden Hazard, right? Like there
Yeah,
were
yeah.
so many games
Oh,
where Eden Hazard
Mata,
was
probably
and
one Mata
Mata.
first as sort of a holding bit, but yeah, Eden Hazard was the next lengthy talisman as such.
And I think that's one of the reasons why he's not necessarily doing as well at Real. A, I think they're playing him not in an optimal position.
Mm.
And B, it's not his team, right? In many ways, Eden Hazard felt like he was Mr. Chelsea,
Yeah, yeah,
and he loved it, like he wanted to be Mr. Chelsea.
yeah.
And like moving to Real in retrospect was obviously a bad decision for him, but yeah,
Mm.
Real, what are you
Yes,
gonna do?
yeah. Yeah, there's a bit of that. Like, yeah, well, what are you gonna do? Real Madrid was like, hey, and it's like, sure, why not?
You're not just gonna not go to Real Madrid. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since, yeah, it was starting to look like perhaps he was. I mean, yeah, I was going to say maybe on a little bit on the outer at Chelsea, but at the same point, not really. In the previous season, he was still doing awesome things. So, but
And he won
yeah,
you a Europa League and
I
got you
know.
into
Yeah,
the Champions League in his last season.
I know. I did not say. I was going to say, yeah, and then I was like, no, actually, no. Because the last season he was awesome still. So, yeah,
I don't think Eden Hazard ever stopped giving his all for Chelsea.
no, no, definitely not.
Like for a flair player that he is, he was like, very much like I have to do everything I can for the Lions.
Yeah,
Whereas, like, yeah, Chelsea has had a few players who you could say are mercurial. Like they won't show up if they don't feel like it.
yeah, yeah. Does seem to be the way sometimes.
But you have to balance them, right? And I think like Chelsea's always had the right systems to balance those sort of players in many ways.
Yeah,
Uh, like for some reason, like I feel like one of the potential mistakes you guys made last season with the selling of Abrams is I think he could have been one of those future talisman players. Like he loves Chelsea, you know?
yeah,
Like he
yeah.
just needs to have a coach who believes in him and lets him. Any player that Mourinho rates, I have to rate.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's like Chelsea's always had the right division of players who are lazy but talented, and players who are hardworking but not as good.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. I mean, with Tammy Abraham, it was a little bit.
Like
If they
Michael
were,
Essien is like the classic.
yeah, very much so. The thing of Tammy Abraham, like the problem there was, well, it was the Lukaku problem. Them not wanting to have him sitting around where he might get huffy about playing number two behind or number three behind others. I was a bit surprised they did get rid of him because of his age and everything, like at least a loan or something. But obviously,
Or maybe they have a buyback clause for Abram.
I can't remember. It is possible.
Anyways, so your highlight is the early part for Chelsea. We talked a little bit about it. For me, from a footballing perspective, obviously Ronaldo scoring on in his first game back was incredible.
Yeah,
Definitely loved that. But one of the big thing when Manchester United have a bad season, I'm able to enjoy football for the sake of football. Like I don't have to worry about being a United fan
Yeah,
that season. Like we're not getting relegated, right?
yeah,
So obviously United's season was a huge disappointment,
yeah,
especially since there seemed to be so many mistakes that could have been avoided. The big highlight for me is seeing a bunch of the newer teams coming up and doing well, which, like, I really enjoyed watching Crystal Palace, as I
yeah,
mentioned to you before the start of the podcast. I think they had a really interesting team. We obviously followed Uncle Mo with our Mo cast and Mo news,
yeah,
and I think like the fact that he ended the season with Roma's first European trophy and all that,
yeah.
like we almost couldn't have planned that better. Like
It was very good.
I'm gonna claim that that happened because of us.
That's right.
We're Uncle Mo's good luck charm.
I think that's very fair.
It's interesting that I think all three of us, you, me, and our orange-haired fan, have all had Mourinho as a manager of our club, with
Yeah,
all very different opinions on their time as manager.
yeah. That is interesting. Yes. So I feel our opinions of the time at our respective clubs are a little closer. So
Yeah. You guys had Mourinho twice, so
yeah, I was happy with both times. How it goes sometimes.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But the so that was my footballing highlight. And I think the team that I really enjoyed was like I said, Crystal Palace with the whole they've changed over a bunch of their players and like I think Conor Gallagher had an incredible
Oh yes.
season. He's one of my players of the season. Just the team he had and what he did for that team. I think we spoke in our previous podcast. My manager of the season is Eddie Howe for what he's done at Newcastle. That was a very interesting team to watch as well, in my
Oh
opinion.
yeah. No, I think yeah, Newcastle did very well. Especially since the January transfer window, they obviously made a outstanding purchase taking Wood from Burnley. Um,
Yeah.
and but yeah, I think obviously they did well in the transfer market there in general, and yeah, the season just completely turned around, which was amazing. You know, if you think about it, that they were dead last coming out of December, second to last,
We had thought
looking.
they were already relegated,
Yeah, no.
basically.
As I say, they were looking like that was it. They were done off to the championship rebuild there and come back in a year later. But nope, they were like, we're going to finish 11th, thank you. Which is just crazy.
Yeah. So, like, one of the most. It's up there with one of the great escapes, but it's not quite as good because we know how they did it. Like, it
Yeah,
wasn't possible without the new incoming money and all that sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Exactly. It was a great escape, but you say it wasn't the greatest because they had money and it happened because their January transfer window they did well right and they made sure they got players that were going to help in the immediate future, could help if the plans didn't go right, and still would be good next season even if things went right. Like it's not going to be I don't think any of their signings were such that they'll be obsolete come this next transfer window. And yeah, all of them clearly helped.
The only thing that I'll point out is Eddie Howe, in many ways, was playing with what Americans like to call house money, where there's no expectations. We
Yeah,
thought he was relegated. There's no pressure. That being said, he did some incredible things, like what he managed to get out of Joe Linton. Like Joe Linton is now potentially somebody who's going to be in Brazil's World Cup squad later this year
yeah,
at Qatar. Versus like you and I would probably laugh off that suggestion, last year
yeah,
before Eddie Howe moved to Newcastle. And it's like so that was definitely a plus for me as well. But Crystal Palace and Newcastle weren't the only interesting teams. I think the season before this, to me, the most interesting team to watch was West Ham, like David Moyes' West Ham, with especially
Mm,
when they had Lingard
yes.
in the team. Despite not having that sort of attacking threat in their midfield, though Jack Bowen had a very good season, it's interesting to me what Moyes managed to do with West Ham this season. I think he's had another very credible season. What I like about David Moyes now is he's added this level of flexibility to his game. Like he's genuinely leveled up
Yeah.
as a manager. Like I don't like I've always had him on in my head as a guy who specializes in making sure teams don't get relegated and doesn't think about trying to get, or at least at his time at Everton, he didn't feel like a manager who thought too much about getting his team over the top. He was just like, okay, for Everton, it's good enough that we're, don't get relegated. And
Yeah.
probably that was fine. And like once he came, like after having a few beatdowns, like he was at West Ham before. This is not his first spell there.
Yeah.
It looked like his career had finished and everything, and he just basically worked hard, changed his game, studied, like did all the things, and like he's one of the most flexible managers in the league right now. Like right now, I think if another potentially bigger club were to look, like if Eddie Howe has a poor start at Newcastle next season, they could do much worse than pick David Moyes as a replacement.
Yeah.
Like that's the sort of, like I don't think he's going to like a club like Real Madrid, for example. Like let's just like I'm not saying that, but he's not, or even maybe even though he was at United before, I don't think he's going back there.
Mm,
I think that bridge is burnt. But like, he could potentially go to a club like Spurs once Conte leaves, because we all know Conte's probably not staying at Spurs long term.
no, it's not a um, not a long term Spurs thing. No.
Yeah. I mean, I think Spurs are giving him the right tools to succeed.
I
So
think he will succeed at Spurs in the short to medium term, but it's a that is the project is a now thing, um, which I think is a big difference to say Arsenal with Ateta, which is a long term thing, and they're going to
even
slowly build it.
Arsenal with Arteta, they have, if they get a bad start next season, and it looks like they might finish outside the top 10 with and that can happen to any club.
Yeah.
That's David Moyes is not a bad manager to bring in to
Mm,
like steady the ship, and
yeah.
then
I think it'd have to be going pretty bad for them. I get the feeling that with Arsenal that they may stick with Ateta for a while. They seem to be trying to build a
potentially,
team for him, but yeah.
and I do think that maybe at this point, with all due respect to Arsenal, maybe David Moyes wouldn't want to go there if
Mm,
because West Ham seem a bit more stable,
yeah. They do seem more stable.
or even potentially replacing Brendan Rodgers at Leicester.
Yeah, yeah. That could be a
If
good option too.
Brendan Rodgers, like it would be greatly unfair to Brendan Rodgers. I think Leicester's squad were very injury ravaged
Yeah.
last season. If he needs the depth, there's nothing wrong with the first 12, 13 players. He can obviously improve, but Leicester like desperately need to add like good role players in that team.
Yeah, yeah. They need the squad players, the depth, the people who are rotating in and out, and yeah.
And will give it their all,
Yeah.
when they have the
Yeah,
opportunities.
exactly. Like a good squad player, someone who's there, knows they're there for the team, they're on, that's 100% there. But otherwise, they may be sitting on the bench, but when they get on, have to sub on, they're giving it all, and they're working hard and training and showing, and getting knowing their roles and knowing what needs to be done if they are getting on the field. And obviously pushing for the place themselves, so if they can start and perform the role of the starter well as well.
Yeah, and like the key thing is they don't make waves when they're not starting. Like they
Yeah,
know that what their role in the team is. And I've heard this from Tifo. One of the interesting ideas they had is potentially football, especially in the Premier League, is moving to an era of specialization.
Yeah,
Can't remember which player they were talking about. Like they base could have been Arsenal, but they bought a player, and the whole point is like he might only play like 20 odd games, and he's gonna probably be in the bench for most of the season. But they spent like 30 odd million for him. But that's work makes sense if it's like a tweak, that your team needs.
yeah,
Might have been City, one of the players that they look to buy. Like, for a team like City, like having a player who's going to come off the bench and not like even Erling
mm,
Haaland, if he's not going to play every game, you don't need a number 9 for every game.
no,
Might be on the bench for like 15, 16 games, this Premier League games, I'm meaning.
yeah, yeah,
Especially as he's learning the league.
yeah. Exactly. It's fully possible that he'll start a few, he'll be on the bench for a few, and come on, and yeah, that get
Like it
rotated
could
through a lot.
very much be a horses for courses
Yeah,
situation for them.
yeah.
But is it worth it for City to spend that if that means they're
I think with Haaland and City, like it's clearly leveling City up, and so yeah,
yeah,
it's clearly worth it. Like he still may not start, but none of their stars start every game. Like you
yeah,
say, De Bruyne was I think 25 games. Point out that yeah, the rest of them 24, 23, 26. Like they're not starting. They're starting that's
yeah.
about 3/4 of the game of the all the Premier League games. Like that's yeah, and these are their players. They're
So it's not
brought for
Holland that
100
they were talking about
million,
because
80 million.
Holland was about 50 million, but there
Yeah.
was a player who was bought by a Premier League side who I can't recall. It's one of the big
Mm.
clubs because nobody has money like that
No, no,
to
exactly.
just leave, and that's why I'm thinking it was City that they were talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to
But
remember.
like,
I remember listening to the same podcast actually. I can't
yeah,
remember.
and they were basically like they've spent a player like, and he's clearly going to be a bench player. He's not going to start
Yeah,
for the club, and he's a good player, but yeah, he's not a starter. What does this mean for the future of the league? Because
yeah,
once Guardiola does something, it's going to
yeah.
impact the
Everybody
rest of
does that.
the league.
I mean, so if Guardiola does something, I think they said in one of the later ones, TFO was like Guardiola does something, and you eventually see it in the Sunday leagues, the same thing. So,
Yeah,
but I remember them also pointing out like it was interesting, but yeah, I think maybe in the same one where they were talking about there's more specialization and how in transfers and picking players. Like we need this player to fill this thing, but at the same time, there's sort of less specialized or less emphasis on the actual structure in the on the field, and this comes into the phase, the four phases philosophy, in that Guardiola and Klopp as well are less interested in what formation they're playing. Like it's not a rigid formation for the whole game. It's like in this game state we need this formation. People need to get into these positions. So it may the defensive formation may look more like a 4-4-2, and then as they go through transition through to attacking, it becomes a 3-5, 3-5-2, whatever it might be.
yeah.
Or differently, it doesn't matter. The numbers in the structure don't matter. It's this player plays here in this way, and that's
Yeah.
where the
Who
specialization
are
is
the
coming
good
in.
players
Because
in the
yeah,
half spaces during transition? Who are the
yeah,
good players in the channels when you've got the ball? Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's what you're needing. You don't look at this guy's a striker. You're like, this guy's good at the channels we're
yeah,
when we don't have the ball because he can cover multiple.
yeah,
He can cover
and
two people at once.
yeah, and
When
how
he's
he
defending.
transitions through from defending to transition, getting the ball to attacking and back again, and
Yeah,
really understanding how they're playing,
like
how they can pick up
Trent.
that
Like Trent
transition.
is the textbook example, right? He's incredible at being at basically shoring up the channels because he basically becomes a right to central midfielder.
Yeah,
But that just means like Salah has this. Like once the transition happens and Liverpool get the ball, like Salah very quickly will get the ball on his end, right?
yeah, yeah,
That's just how it works with the, and if you know that that's how the transition works, then, but this also means like he's not as good on the defensive end. He's good once the team are defending, the other team has the ball phase, because he
Yeah.
goes back and covers the right back, but he's not as good in that transition to defense
Yeah.
because he's effectively playing as a right midfielder at that point. It's not, and like I think Liverpool are good at covering that because Van Dijk goes in and protects his channel on the transition to defense
Yeah.
because he can like protect that channel, but also protect the half space in the center because he's Van Dijk and he's incredible,
Yeah. Exactly.
and he's basically that level of player. Like once he plays for England, it's very obvious that he can't do that. England can't expect him to play that way for them because they don't have Van Dijk.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's just it. Like that's the, or they don't have a defender like Van Dijk
Yeah.
who like this is why Kyle Walker is the natural right back for England.
Mm.
Like, is he as good a player as Trent is in the Premier League? No, he's not as good for City as like Trent is for Liverpool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's gonna be better in England's system.
But yeah, exactly. It works better in the system that England plays. So
And like in many ways, Trent's a unicorn, right? Like Liverpool have a bunch of unicorns in their team that like is what makes them effective at in the Premier League, makes them difficult for a lot of the Premier League teams to play against them, but also makes them kind of predictable, as the way Carlo
yeah.
Ancelotti put it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You know how they're going to play by just the fact that the players that they have, and they do it really well, but they do the same thing each time. So.
Yeah. And to be fair, they don't have to do anything different. Like, okay, like Liverpool don't have a team that's as in the league that's as good as they are, or better, significantly better than they are. Like West Ham have to play differently to a team that's better against a team that's better than them,
Yeah.
and a team that's and they will play differently when they're playing a team that's worse than them, and also who's available in the team and how to mishmash the squad
Yeah.
at that point. Like, unlike, for example, someone like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't do that. He plays the quote unquote United way whenever he's doing stuff to his detriment,
Yeah.
and a lot of times.
Yeah. It's
In a way, it's good that for David Moyes that he's not at United. Like, United took a bunch of managers and like mistakes before they finally accepted they need to kind of commit to a manager's style or particular philosophy of a general manager. Like the fact that they didn't have a general manager until last season, like that just shows how much of a
yeah.
Mickey Mouse operation United are.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically that's the
They never needed one while Fergie was there. Taken them a very long time, I think, United to
yeah.
stop thinking that they can just magically be back to the glory days.
I think quite rightfully people will just say that United's manager transfer policy for a long time under Woodward was probably just buy whoever is famous and will please the fans and sell T-shirts and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's interesting that because Tifo have
Yeah.
said that they
Who do the
think
fans want?
Woodward,
Buy him.
because
He'll make
he's
money.
made a lot of mistakes at Manchester United and seemed to have sort of learned from them, he could be a good general manager for another team. Like, because he would increase their revenue and things like that, because
Mm.
he's very good at those things.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And he now knows how to delegate
Yeah.
responsibility. Like, maybe not a general manager, maybe like a
Yeah.
president or a CEO.
Something, yeah. But yeah, as you say, he's learned from his mistakes, so it means it's he's likely to be able to add even more
Yeah.
value because he'll he can see, he already knows what not to do. And parts of the
Yeah,
bits
I mean,
that can
it
really
would
add value
also be
to other
typical that
clubs, he can
United,
do very well. So
somebody else does crap at United, and then like another club gets the best out of them. Like that would it would be like peak United for that, for it to be like Woodward, for it to be Woodward who leads to that happening. And just the funniness of it like almost makes me want it to happen.
it would be very funny. And I think I'm with you. Make it happen. Make it so.
So who would you say is your player of the year?
I guess yeah, it's Mohamed Salah. Though as I was saying before the podcast, I like Son. Son did some really wonderful things.
Yeah.
And it's the one stat that stands out to me is that both Son and Salah scored the same amount of goals, 23 goals each, but Son doesn't take the penalties, which that just says that quote unquote, as Tifo said, he scored more real goals, although all the goals are clearly real goals and all count the same. But Son scored more quote unquote real goals, which makes him
One of those
better.
things, right?
But yeah,
Like people don't like people who look at Andy Cole's record don't realize that he has scored like he had a season where he scored like 35 goals for Newcastle in in the Premiership, and he didn't take any penalties.
yeah, that's crazy when you think about it.
And like he's got the third highest number of goals still in Premiership history, and once again, he's not a penalty taker.
Yeah,
So,
amazing.
and he's done well at almost every team he's played for, like
Yeah,
worked multiple strike partners and whatnot. So there's a argument to like imagine how many goals he would probably be very close to Alan Shearer's record, and or Wayne Rooney if he had actually
taking penalties as well. Yeah,
penalties as well. And it's interesting to me in the top three goal scorers for the Premier League all time, we've got two of those players have played for both Newcastle and Manchester United.
yeah, that is interesting.
So I think I agree with you that I think Mohamed Salah should be Premier League Player of the
Yeah,
season, but I do have to give a small shout out, I think, to Conor Gallagher. I think he did an incredible, and Jack Bowen. I think they both did incredible jobs at
yeah,
teams that are not as well resourced as those Liverpool, Manchester City, and done an incredible job for them. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do next season. And
yeah.
I'm definitely like both Crystal Palace, West Ham, depending on how their off seasons go, could once again be up there amongst the most interesting teams to watch.
Yes, yeah. I think yeah, it's going to be interesting. Especially West Ham. I think could have a very good season next year. They've been, I mean, they've had a good last few seasons where they've, pretty much been pretty close to breaking into even the top four and being a strong contender there. I don't think it's going to take too much for that to become a bit of a reality as well. They got a good
Yeah,
strong side. The squad's good. Like it's just been putting it all together. I think maybe just one or two players away, but not a
like
lot.
it might be something for another video, but I had a conversation with my cousins about who we thought was going to be top four next season. So obviously Liverpool, City.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with Conte, I was like, I have to give Spurs either they'll be fourth or third, in my
Mm,
opinion, just because they have Conte and they're backing Conte with the sort of players he likes.
yeah. No, they're definitely going to be a genuine contender next year.
Um, the only reason I didn't pick Chelsea as my projected top four is because you guys still have to rebuild your entire defense.
Yeah, we really do.
Like there's like you good a manager as Tuchel might be, good players you have lost all your starting defenders, and I think Mendy is also suffering from some confidence issues after AFCON.
Yeah, it does look that way. Yeah, so yeah, I would agree with you that depending on the transfer window, but even with a good transfer window, it's still
It'll
going
take
to
time for
still
those
take
players
time
to
for the
bed.
yeah for the, it's a defense like it's going to be a bit of a worry going into the first part of next season.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting like the um that Chelsea won't be in the top six or anything like that,
No, no.
like, and Chelsea might even qualify for the Champions League by winning a Europa League next season just because they can do those things. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
we're
is
already in the
well
Champions League
within,
next year. It'll be the year after you're talking about.
or
Or you think we're
sorry,
going to drop out at the group stage of the Champions League?
potentially yes. That's what I'm thinking. It's the thing, right? You don't have a defense. It's really hard for me to see where it's
it's
coming from.
yeah, it is going to be hard at the moment until we know what our defenses actually is. Yeah, it's going to be um, problematic, and anything could happen.
Yeah. So that's literally my only, like, I think you'll be higher than United. So that's, let's just put
Yeah,
that
yeah,
out there. I'm not being a homer.
yeah.
Um, I definitely think you're gonna be higher than United, but that's not a comfort to you, I don't think.
No, I don't know if that's really going to help a lot, but yeah,
Um, but I do think, like the team that could be gunning for your position in the top five, in like to try and, but I don't think they'll make the top four is West Ham. I do think Leicester might be a threat, but I don't think they'll finish top four because that's again, I need to see more investment in that squad.
yeah, yeah.
They don't have Europe next season, so maybe.
Yeah, well, there is that, I guess. I was saying that said, I still don't really see it coming out that way. So I have to see.
Yeah, I think Chelsea sixth is the lowest I see them finish.
Yeah, though I'd feel a bit disappointed that low, but I can see why it might happen.
Yeah, it's difficult next season. There's a bunch of complications for Chelsea on top of the complications every other team has, which is like World Cup, etc., etc.
Yeah,
Chelsea has a bunch of players who will be playing at the World Cup, and there might be more than a few injuries as well. But injuries, if we assume injuries affect everyone evenly, so it's like Chelsea is okay because nobody's super vital. United, if Ronaldo gets injured next season at the World Cup,
yeah,
we might not finish top six or top seven. Like, I'm
yeah.
not joking. Like, that's
No,
a
no.
legitimate possibility.
Yes, definitely. Especially if he's out for multiple games,
Yeah.
that could be quite worrying for United.
Whereas I think if Spurs, unless they lose both Son and Kane, and even if
Yeah,
they did lose both of them, they have enough good players in that squad for Conte to, adjust things and
yeah,
get them through. Because Conte is good at like mid-season adjustments and like those Juve teams. There are times when it looked like they were basically done for, and they came back and won the season because you know Conte figured something out.
Yeah, Conte did Conte things. He was like,
Yeah,
where do I make the changes? Here, here, here. Do this, do it like this. Here we go. Done.
pretty much. So yeah, exactly. Like you say, Conte did Conte things, and like we know he can do those things. So this is where Ten Hag may be able to do those things. I don't know if he's got the squad to do those things at United at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be once again, another thing to watch through the transfer window and see who United can get. Which,
Right, there's just so many needs in that United team.
mm,
Like even like it's the like when the NFL draft was happening, like yeah, the Houston Texans, like what are their needs? It's like everybody, every
yeah,
position.
every position.
And like for somehow the opposite was the Cincinnati Bengals because they got a bunch of linesmen in their like O-line people in
Yeah.
their free agency, like we all thought they should. So basically, when it came their turn to draft number 31, because they were the second best team in the
Mm-hmm.
season, it was like, oh, we can just draft the best player because we don't have a need right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Just who's left. That's the best. That one. Okay.
Like, it's because I've been thinking a bit about like, because I don't know, as you know, I very much enjoy looking at analytics in sport, and
Yeah.
it's one of my big interests. So like it's occurred to me that like basically the early Moneyball era
Mm-hmm.
and the during the early Moneyball era, the whole point was finding the value in the market because of things that are undervalued. And basically you're looking at data to show truths that isn't obvious to everybody.
Yeah.
And it just always plays out. And because baseball has so much data, you can always like it's statistically significant. You have enough statistical data that you can trust it.
Yeah.
Like for example, it's not like that in cricket because even the most ardent cricket um, analytics person goes, look, if something is your conventional wisdom disagrees with the data, we have to respect that because we have so little data. Like we play relatively far less cricket games than baseball games are
Yeah.
played.
Yeah.
Like there are more baseball games played in a season than there are test matches ever have been
Yeah. Yeah.
played. You know?
Yes. Exactly.
So this is you're dealing with different levels of data to figure it out. Now, like in American sport, like especially football analytics people are talking about it. The value is no longer in following the data because everybody follows data. It's the guy who knows when to go against the data
Ah.
that's
Right. Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
And like the guy who's consistently correct about when to ignore the data, like they know when to separate the macro from the micro.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And that they're in that second phase and like it'll be interesting to see uh, what how that evolves because they have openly said that they're very much influenced by cricket because especially test cricket because they call test cricket the statistics monster, like the analytics monster that it's there's not enough data and there's so many different ways it can change
Mm-hmm.
in game states because it's over 5 days and
Yeah. Yeah.
conditions change. Like game states are different every day, and like
Actually,
and
that's
you've got
the big thing is the changing conditions over that time period as well. Like that, obviously, each game, the conditions, the field of play conditions, and can't be the same. They'll always be slightly different, and that will impact on how everything goes. So, yeah, you don't even have the data set having a even keel. Like every game is different and a different set of underlying conditions to go against it.
like there's two kinds of quote unquote wisdom that people talk about. There's the rational knowledge, like you experiment and you learn and you observe things and you
Mm,
um, get results from that. And there's the metis knowledge, where like there's traditions that people follow because they know in their bones that that's the right way to do things.
yeah.
So like the famous example people use is like when nobles tried to redo how they planted forests in the planted trees in the Black Forest to get more lumber out of it. So they grew them more spaced out, exactly correct, so they could maximize the number of trees, and it ended disastrously. But it was scientific and rational with based on the knowledge they had.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like there's a reason why people traditionally did things the way they did.
Yeah.
And like I think to fully to get the value out of like the data, you have to kind of respect why the conventional wisdom is what it is, and see where it may, or to understand where it might not apply, and
Yeah.
then also like when to stop ignoring. Like it makes you better at knowing when to ignore the data.
Yeah, yeah. You got to have that holistic view, and you got to know, but the holistic
Yeah,
view's got to be grounded in something. As you say, and it's the traditions of this is the traditional wisdom. You do it this way. But if you know why it's done that way and what is the things that fed into it, then it generally comes
I
down to the juxtaposition of those two types of wisdom is where there is too many variables, and therefore the data is not going to give you analyzing the data is not going to give you the true picture, really, even though you may think it does. So when you know where that happens, where are those key points? That's when like actually at this point the data is not going to give me the information I want. It's potentially even going to give me the wrong information. So I need to look elsewhere
yeah,
or look at a bigger picture.
it's the thing, right? Like one of the things with cricket is like cricket has a lot of metas because where this sort of assumed generational knowledge is useful is things like climate and how it affects how the land works, so
Yeah,
how the pitch will react to the climate. Like we know so many stories of like village cricket teams where a better team comes to play them, but the captain knows, ooh, I think there's gonna be a bit of a fog, and we're gonna get really good. Like for example, if this was a T20 game, 90. If you follow the data, you win the toss. You think you bowl first.
yeah,
99% of the time, and 1% of the time, you think about it, and then you bowl first.
yeah,
Like that's the conventional wisdom, and that's what you should always do in a
yeah,
T20 game. But because the statistical advantage, but like there is a thing. But if you know that there's a captain who thinks about this fog thing, it's because there's like this really interesting, like, because this was used as a exercise, like an imaginary thought exercise in White Ball Analytics, one of the blogs I followed. This guy is now the Kolkata Knight Riders analytics guy.
All right,
So
yeah,
he stopped writing articles because his hobby became his job.
yeah. That's really nice.
So, but he's left a lot of his databases for people to look at because he was
Oh, cool.
interested in saying like, what can you guys work out that I'm interested to see what people think
Yeah,
about these things. Now one of the things he was saying is like in Test cricket, that whole knowing about this last minute thing, like about the weather, that might uh the percentage advantage it gives you might be 40%. It's not necessarily more enough to overcome the advantage of batting second in a T20 game
mm.
because that's almost like a 60 to at some point like 80% win rate. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that it gives you.
Yes,
And also like in an example where the other team is clearly better than you are, you need more than that to overcome the uh uh you need more than that to overcome more than those odds to overcome what the other team can do to you.
yeah, yeah,
So at cricket there's a the value you get from metis, you have to kind of understand that that doesn't necessarily apply to white ball cricket
yeah,
because the data advantages are different.
yeah, yeah,
Like in test matches, it's almost the opposite of T20s, right? Like you bat first, and
Yeah.
then you think about it, but then you bat first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless there's like incredibly good bowling conditions, and like that is the local knowledge.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You bat first unless because there's it's basically bashing you on the head. The weather's bashing you on the head to say this is a bowling day.
Yeah, like one of the famous examples he uses, Alistair Cook, was at the Adelaide Oval, and I think it was a drawn series still in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And he won the toss at the Adelaide Oval, and he had a bowl,
Yeah.
and Australia scored, I think, 500 plus. Ian Chappell's big thing is Adelaide Oval definitely is a pitch where you bat first, and I
Yeah.
think Alistair Cook wasn't wrong. He figured there was something happening, and um, Jimmy Anderson was able to swing the ball and get some early wickets. But the thing was, like, it wasn't enough to overcome the fact that it is such a flat pitch that once that advantage is lost with the Kookaburra ball, which is not the Duke's ball,
Yeah.
because the Duke's ball swings more early on. The Kookaburra ball, swings more early on, but it loses the swing much quicker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas the Duke's ball maintains its condition for longer, so it doesn't actually swing as much as the Kookaburra ball, which is like, what, yeah, one of those things that people don't really think about. They're just like, oh, Duke's swing, but
Yeah.
no, why does it swing? How does it swing? Like you'll notice that a lot of Jimmy Anderson's wickets come later on in the innings because he's patient about waiting,
Yeah.
and like he's always clever and knows when to. Yeah, he's knows exactly where to target the batsman for maximizing uncertainty.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, they and in like Test cricket, like that was the one. Like basically, Alistair Cook had this thing of going like, I think we can win by getting early wickets, and getting early wickets increases your chances to win. Let's just, for example, say 30%. But if we know historically the Adelaide Oval's batting first advantage is something like 60% of the time, team batting first wins.
Yeah.
And you're not going to overcome that advantage with
No.
just
No.
30%. Like you got to and I don't think cricket captains think like that, right? Like,
No.
and not everybody can think like that.
No. I guess in that case, there's all right. There's the opposite you have to um, consider as well. Like, what is the odds that our batting lineup will survive through to get to the good batting conditions, or can we?
Yeah.
Because if you're looking and going, oh, the weather conditions are such that there's something here. There's going to be some swing. There's going to be early wickets. I know most captains wouldn't think of that. They think, oh, hey, how many wickets do we think we can realistically get? Can we make advantages and get enough through the opposition batting lineup to then drive it home? And it's you've got some targets. Well, to make this work, we need to get in the first hour we need to get this many wickets, second hour this many wickets, and onwards. But there is a flip to that of, well, if we it's Adelaide, it's a bat first sort of thing. It's kind of it flattens out. It's no matter what, you're going to get good batting. You've still got to make it through to that batting bit. So I guess there's having faith or having knowledge in your batting lineup. If you've got a bit of a fragile batting lineup, then maybe it's better to try and roll the dice and be like, well, maybe we can get far enough through the opposition's batting lineup that we get into the bits that are frail for them, and
Yeah.
that advantage isn't as big as opposed to us getting rolled, not putting a lot on the board, and then the opposition getting free reign of the best batting conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to, I think, and that's perhaps where the data, so that's the bits where the data isn't as good at pointing that out, and you do need a
The
bit of
data
the
can only give you the percentages and numbers. At the end of the
yeah,
day, you got to apply it to your situation.
yeah,
Like, yeah, if you flip a coin, it's going to be 50-50. But if you decide to base every decision on the result of a coin flip, things are going to go badly. You can't
Yeah,
just, there are going to be some decisions you don't need to flip a coin on,
yeah, exactly.
even if you're not sure.
Yes, no, the coin flip for anything that you consider to be a 50-50 choice, even if you just did it on anything you consider to be a 50-50 choice, um, it's still going to go bad for you.
Yeah. And like, this is where like learning data's a tool. Like learning
Yeah.
when to apply the tool is what's gonna make you be a successful, like 21st century captain. And it's almost there with cricket, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I can It's interesting to me that like Brendan McCullum has basically told England like, look, there's a line you need to cross. It's the audacity line, like where you've taken the attackingness too far, and you need to cross that line while the opposition don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Because that's where you can steal wins, and that because he's taken the whole. This is you're playing in a tournament format.
Yeah.
Stealing wins will get you, and it's like I don't think any other coach is doing that to a certain degree. Gary Stead was doing that
Yeah.
with New Zealand, but not as much as Brendan McCullum.
Yeah, well, that's not a surprise as well, given it's Brendan McCullum. Like that was almost his captaincy as well. Like,
For Brendan McCullum, the way because cricket players are human, right?
yeah,
Like it's one of those things where in like the tide hasn't quite changed yet for the way we look at the game. Like one of my big bugbears is why do openers immediately after the power play is over slow down and try to play a longer innings and like sort of try to become an anchor.
yeah,
And I'm just like, well, the um the main reason for that is teams know, even though on average uh a T20 game has at most 6-7 wickets lost. The moment you lose 2 or 3 wickets and tailenders may have to bat, like people lower down the order feel pressured into playing defensively.
yeah. Well, it's one of those things, if you're getting lots of wickets lost, everybody feels a bit more defensive, so that becomes the mindset. Even if it's still a good batting wicket and there's runs to be had, and you just gotta, you know,
It's
it's a
also
confidence
the
thing.
whole you're gonna get uh uh you can get criticized for you're gonna get criticized for not playing a bit defensively for an over or two after having lost a few wickets,
Mm,
rather than you're not gonna get criticized for going, why didn't you just keep attacking? Like that's what you should keep doing. Like you know, and like it's fair enough that they don't want to like this is their living, right? They don't
yeah,
want to lose their job, and like managers are pressured into dropping them and that sort of thing if
yeah, yeah.
they can help it.
Exactly. Yeah. There is other factors in play as well, as you say, and I think it's just human nature as well to be like, well, things are going badly. We need to consolidate first and find an even it out first, and then we'll rebuild and we'll get back into the game. But let's just stop the problems that are happening now first, and then move on to the next problem.
But like my absolute bugbear is like when the openers have not lost a wicket and they still slow down
Yeah.
after.
Well, that's back to traditional wisdom, right? Which is,
Right.
oh, the power play's over, oh, the field's a bit more spread. There's not as many. You can't be as aggressive because it's more risky to do it. So now we need to play more conventional cricket, and that means being more defensive and being a bit slower in your run rate. But like, especially white ball cricket these days, like the fielding restrictions don't go crazy. Like it doesn't go from I think it goes 2 to 3 to 4 or something like that. Like
Yeah.
it's a slow progression out. Like it's power plays over. It's only one extra player out in the deep. Like surely that still means plenty of spaces to hit into.
Also, like you're playing T20, you're not dealing with you don't
Yeah,
care about what's where the fielders are. You're hitting it where there should be no fielders.
yeah. Where the fielders can't be, on the other side of the
Yeah.
fence. Hit it over the fence.
Like the
Can't get
safest
out there.
shot is safest shot is out of the ground.
Yeah.
There you go.
You can't get out if you hit it out of the ground.
Pretty much.
Hmm.
And uh, if you're a team like for example like your first batter gets out on like the seventh or eighth over, and you've got a player like Andre Russell in your team. Why aren't you sending Andre Russell out?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Like, the guy who's gonna basically go at 250, even if he gets a super quick fire 30, 40 runs, other people can bat at the death too. You can send a few of your, like, apparently this is one of the reasons why people don't like sending up pinch hitters after the power play to keep the run rate going. Because, even though you've only lost like someone like Sunil Narine down the order, the fact that it looks like, oh, you've only got two or three batters, you've only got like, you've already lost 3 or 4 wickets, makes them nervous, even though two of those wickets might have been bowlers
Yeah.
you sent down,
Yeah, set out, just have a bit of a whack, and they got, a quick fire 20 odd, and then got out. And a couple of overs, like, oh, we're losing wickets. So you're not really, you're losing wickets that you essentially were never going to use. So good use of your resources. They got some extra runs, and you still got your good batters anyway. So,
like as
but
long as they come at a strike rate that's higher than it would take for one of your quote unquote specialist batsmen
mm,
to score runs at, that's all that matters, right?
yeah,
Like,
maybe this is just a bit where the traditional wisdom hasn't, well, the data-driven wisdom hasn't displaced enough of the traditional wisdom yet to change how things. And
it's
T20, it's
uh,
changing a lot. Like, and I wouldn't be surprised if things like that might come into it in the not too different. Somebody might try it, but it needs a team to try it and for it to work. Then it will. Then the meta will change, right? And suddenly
I,
all teams will be doing that.
I feel like every season one team does it and it works. Like they'll have Sunil Narine just doing Sunil Narine things, because Sunil Narine does not give a crap about his wicket.
No.
He's kind of like, when you've promoted me up the order, you're not there for me. You're not expecting me to score a century. You want me to score 20 off 8 balls.
Yeah.
It's my job to throw the bowler off his rhythm and like destroy his game. After that, like, batsmen can do batsman things. That's not
Yeah.
my concern anymore.
Yeah. I think the thing is, it's still conventional wisdom is to conserve as much wickets as possible. I think we've said it before. Like in T20, if you've not on your ninth wicket on the 20th, on the last
Especially
ball of
when
the 20th
setting a
over,
target,
yeah,
like
what are you
especially when
doing?
you're setting a target, like what are you doing?
Yeah,
Like chase completely different. You're using resources to fit the situation and you have
yeah,
to follow the game state. Like
yeah, yeah,
completely understand why that is not a thing when you're chasing.
yeah. But
And
even
it makes
still, like,
sense. Like you
yeah,
know exactly the right amount of risk to take when you're chasing.
yeah,
Like, oh, we're this far behind. There's no point losing. We may as well go for it. Like that's the right attitude to have
yeah,
when you're chasing a big score or chasing a score and you're behind the required rate. But
yeah, yeah,
like, when you're setting a total, what have you got to lose, man?
yeah,
Like you're already very unlikely to win, so you have to take risks.
yeah. And you may as well. It's not even just taking risks; it's using all your resources. I mean, like, we
Yeah.
have this many um, people who do things. So yeah, why not promote some bowlers up, with wickets coming out of the end of the power play to go and pitch into a bit. Even if it's just even if they don't get a quick fire 20, even if it's only a couple of boundaries and then they're out, like just enough to mess around with the bowler's line or thought process or anything. It's probably enough so that they, just the fact that it's a bowler coming out and he's just going to have a wild swing at the ball, probably enough to make the actual bowler bowling the ball be like, wait, I have to rethink what I'm doing in my game plans, and oh, this is happening, and then the real batters come back
And
out, and the game plan's probably up in the air again, and nobody knows what they're doing. And you got at least you've got a moment. You may only be half an over, maybe an over, but you get an advantage out of that, and you can use that to get your thing. You know, whilst the bowling side's sorting out what they're doing, you know, you've got an opportunity. So
especially if you've got a matchup related advantage, like,
yeah,
they've got a left arm spinner bowling, and then you just send Sunil Narine or another, hard hitting lefty
yeah.
into the out there. Like, that's gonna that's gonna affect things with their planning.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the thing. And maybe that's still not, become conventional, overthrown the conventional wisdom for, especially for batting first in T20s. And maybe that's what's needed to start pushing the statistics back to being favouring batting first. And it's like actually playing with your lineup and making sure that you're using everything you can and disrupting finding every advantage you can and creating those advantages as best you can, to generate your runs on the board, so that you do have something to pressure, scoreboard pressure to put back on. As I say, there's plenty of advantage in batting second in a T20 because you know what the target is, you know what the plan is, you know where the risks are, you know
Yeah,
exactly, you have all the information you need.
yeah,
Batting first, you have zero information. So if you got zero information, you've got to do something else to try and generate the chances you can. Try and control the things you can. So yeah.
yeah,
So hopefully it'll get there.
exactly. But it's just this interesting thing because, like, cricket is becoming so influential in the way people look at analytics. Like, the two sports that seem to be very difficult for analytics to kind of fully understand is NFL, American football, and cricket, Test cricket, because
Yeah.
Test cricket, it's obvious, like you said, it's even if it wasn't like the change in conditions, it's a monster just from the um yeah the number of days you're playing, like the chances, the conditions of your bowlers, just their
Just
physical condition will be
e-
different
or even just
in every day.
the mental
Yeah,
condition over
yeah,
that time changes as well. Like it's a
100%.
5 days. That's a long time. Everybody's got to stay peak performance the whole time. That's takes a bit of doing. Um, so yeah, physical conditions change, physical condition of the players change, mental condition of the players change, and these, other than the environmental conditions, the physical and the mental conditions of the players can the state of the game and where the game is and will have an impact on that as well. So depending on what's happening in the game, can have different impacts on different players in different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised that there's just not enough data because there's just way too many variables.
It's also difficult for them to figure out what the algorithm should be for success,
Yeah,
you know? Because it varies, so the game state, is so variable, and you can have draws.
yeah, and there's the thing, when the draw was a good draw or a bad draw for the team. Like, was it a draw because they played well, and it just so happened that they, there was something bad happened at the beginning, and that may be environmental. The first day may have been extremely um, bowler friendly, or maybe the other way around, and the last day it's been extremely bowler friendly because the pitch is
Yeah.
broken up and stuff. But you've got such good batters that they can navigate even that horrible pitch condition where the ball's turning square or whatever, and they can still battle through for the end of the day and keep the draw, even if it was looking
Yeah.
everything else says it shouldn't. But yeah,
Yeah, but also like because of the way the tournament works, a draw is like a dropped 10 points for both teams, and like
yeah,
that's a strategic bit of knowledge. Like sometimes is it worthwhile for you to lose and like drop those points to prevent the other side from like would you there's going to be a time when teams are going to go for draws in games they should protect they could potentially go for wins because it cements their position on
yeah,
the table
yeah, yeah.
against the opposition.
Yes, and that
But
is
that was always a thing.
yeah. It's always been a thing for a very very long time.
Yeah, so maybe it's not as big a deal as I'm thinking,
No,
or as big a change as I'm thinking.
I mean you can go back to, was it mid early 2000s? Stephen Fleming, doing pretty much exactly that. Of now, well, we can't. We could either really try to win this or just bat slow. And defensively, in one of the tri series with Australia and Pakistan, Bangladesh, whoever it was, they had a just batted slow on purpose. Didn't even try to win the match, the ODI, but batted slowly so the other team's net run rate was horrendous. So therefore, they wouldn't make it to the final. That just it might even been against Australia. So yeah, so that the Australians' run rate in net run rate ended up being super low, so that they wouldn't make the final. It would be whoever else it was,
This was
Pakistan. But
in the World Series, so
yeah,
what had happened is this was after New Zealand were obviously not going to win the game.
yeah, yeah,
They decided not to go for the bonus points so that South Africa would get through.
yes,
So they
but South Africa,
intentionally got less than enough to make the but the thing is by guaranteeing South Africa got through, it also meant that they would get through. Like it
yeah,
guaranteed their position too. They didn't intentionally make South Australia miss out
no, no,
when
it was
they had
beneficial for
already
them.
qualified.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was about it was more how they were manipulating the tournament itself for the beneficial of New Zealand, which makes sense. Like, as I say, and it was after the game. Like the better option was to win the game, and
Yeah.
after it became clear that that was very unlikely, um, bar some miraculous divine intervention, basically, where it was just this was the
Yeah,
better
yeah.
option. But that's
Yeah.
just
This
showing
was
that
the option that was more likely to get New Zealand to qualify.
yeah,
Because then all South Africa needed was to get a bonus point, even if they lost in their next game, and it would be New Zealand versus South Africa in the
yeah,
final.
yeah.
Because I think South Africa had a more winning record against Australia. They needed to give South Africa a more winning record against Australia,
Mm.
like some complicated
It
thing.
was a
But yeah,
complicated thing, yeah. That's why my memory of it was a bit poor.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was also the series Shane Warne announced himself.
yeah.
So, as always, when we speak about football, we end our segment on the Mo Corner.
Whoa, Connor.
Mo Corner. So, it looks like with Mauricio Pochettino leaving PSG,
Mm-hmm.
that Jose Mourinho will be going to PSG.
Ooh.
Do you like this move, if only because of the popcorn potential?
Oh, I mean, I thought the popcorn was flying well last year, but yeah, no. If Mourinho goes to PSG, dear God, that is going to be. I
Gonna
guess Mo
coach
Corner.
Neymar.
Yeah, I guess Mo Corner continues next year if that happens. I mean, we can't not have it. It's at PSG. Like that's just going to be um, so much fun.
Oh yeah, I'm already looking forward to it. But at this stage, it's still a rumor.
Hmm.
If he goes to PSG, very likely he will be taking Tammy Abrams with him.
Yeah.
The new Michael Essien, that
Yeah.
is Tammy Abrams. And that's not even no joke.
No, that will be what happens.
Because, yeah, Michael Essien pretty much says that Jose Mourinho is my white dad. It's, like, it's this weird thing, because, like, Jose Mourinho's got this attitude, this reputation for being a real dickhead as a coach and, like, to try and beat the opposition. But the players who genuinely like him off the pitch, genuinely like him. Like, they fight, fire through walls for him. Like Michael
Yeah.
Essien, like towards the end of his career, like on one leg, broken knee, would go through walls for Mourinho.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think yeah, you're right. That's it. There is a Mourinho influence, a factor that just goes into it that people just seem to want to follow him anywhere, no matter what his reputation's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so like he knows that winning the French league means nothing. Like for
Yeah,
Chelsea, for PSG, they want to win the Champions League.
yeah,
Um, so what happens there is, and like this is like he's a manager who's won the Champions League 3 times, I want to say. He's won it
one,
with
two.
Real. Um,
Um, right with Porto, Real, and what's it?
and
Um,
Inter.
Inter. Yes, I was like my head was going Juventus. Like no, it's not Juventus. The other one. No, Inter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yes, three.
There's won it 3 times. If we were to win it at 4 different clubs, that would be, that's some CV.
That is some CV.
Like Klopp and Guardiola have still only won it at one club.
Yeah.
Ancelotti, you could almost say, is like a Champions League specialist at this point because he's
Yeah.
won it almost at every club. Other than Chelsea, he's won it at every club he's been at. Chelsea and Everton aside.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was PSG manager too, wasn't he,
Oh,
Ancelotti?
that's right. Yes. Okay. Well, I guess it's for Mourinho to show he's better. Then he can win it with
Correct.
PSG.
The manager who gets PSG into to win the Champions League is gonna be legendary, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a thing. Like, how do you think about the fact that Mbappe has now got say over the type of players that PSG are gonna buy?
That is a bit crazy. I didn't realize that was yeah.
The fact is, like, the kind of the contract he's got is that he's back in free agency. Come, like, first of all, good on you, Mbappe, for getting your money, like 500 million. Like,
Yeah. Good
you
work.
go, son. Like,
Yeah.
like absolutely. Like, you can't argue with that. He's basically gone. I want to become the guy who leads gets PSG their first Champions League.
Hmm.
But if you guys are still gonna be stupid and do dumb crap, then I'm basically gonna go on to free agency again when I turn 25 in about 3 years. So
Right. Yeah.
you know, you better not be stupid. Yeah, But the fact that like, is this a new trend? Is football gonna become like basketball? Like LeBron James literally like picks yeah,
Yeah.
tells the Lakers which teammates to get.
I don't think we'll quite get that far, but yeah, I think players are going to start getting more influence again, um, which in some cases will be good, in some cases perhaps not so good, but yeah, it won't get basketball level because you don't like 1 in 5 is different to
But
1 in 11, right? So
yeah, but also like compare is Mbappe the LeBron James of football? I don't think so.
no, there's that
Is
as well.
Mbappe the Tom Brady of soccer
No,
football? No.
no.
Like those guys, they have a say who comes to their team. I get it. If it was Ronaldo or Messi
Yeah,
who had a say and making and telling them what to do, I'd be like, yeah, he's Ronaldo.
yeah, yeah,
He's Messi,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Things have changed, but it's Ronaldo and Messi. They always probably had a bit of a say in what happened.
Yes.
But Mbappe, fair dinkum. Don't get me wrong. If they're willing to give it to you, they're willing to give it to you.
Yeah. I know exactly. If he can get that sort of contract, then hey, good for him.
I I don't think City or Chelsea get players like that, and I don't think Liverpool's system works like that. But I could see that happen at United. I could see Ronaldo get this sort of contract at United.
Yeah,
Well, not the money part because, he's almost 40, but
yeah, yeah.
the other part. So there's definitely lots of interesting things happening in this off season to look forward to, I think.
Mhm. Yes.
Even if there hasn't been as many transfers as we would usually like to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the time we do our intro episode, there should be. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Oh, we got a good 4 weeks, 5 weeks for then, so I'm sure there'll be some action in that time.
But yeah, I mean, if it doesn't, I don't know what I'll do. Like, it's like the silly season is one of the things we look forward to in football. Like the off season is not that long, but it's like super packed with rumors and like craziness.
Yeah, yeah,
The longer it takes for the business to occur, the more we ramp up this anticipation. So I don't know how
yeah.
much longer I can keep it up.
I would expect in the next week things start to happen. Maybe 2 weeks. Give it to mid-July. You'd expect some things there.
Oh, by the way, United are still not going to sign a number six, which is what they need. I see we may have gotten Frankie De Jong, but he's not a number six. Oh,
Yeah,
also watch as United players expect him to be a number six, just
yeah,
like
of course.
Pogba.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Obvious traps are obvious.
Obvious.
I think on that note, that's all we have time for today.
And don't forget to come to our Discord. Link in the description below. We have a bit of chat discussion, getting ready for the season, the EPL season, starting in August. And a few more chats. And don't forget, we'll have our fantasy league starting with the new season as well. So drafts and everything will be happening.
And yeah, thank you for listening, and look forward to hearing. Look forward to listening to us next time.
Catch you next time.